Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone to the fourth class of our ongoing reading of the Krishna book. We'll be starting from chapter 9, Damodar Leela. Super exciting. This is a all-time classic chapter. And to kick us off, the most auspicious Harinam Sankirtan.
Yes, okay, sweet souls, so wonderful to be with you all tonight. Really, anytime we're with you, filled with such gratitude. So let's come into our chosen seats and invite any movement. Open and close your mouth. We'll take a clearing breath together, just acknowledging whatever was present in your day today, what you're carrying with you into class. Inhale, breathe it in, breathe it in, breathe it in. And exhale, let it go, let it go, let it go. Start with our opening prayers. Take a deep breath in. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Panchakalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nam Sankirtan Ki. Shastra Study Group Ki. Mom Bhakti Health Song and Beyond Ki. Hari 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 Bol.
Om Jnana Timirantasya Jnananjana Shlakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Go to Premanandi Hari Bol. Thumbs up if you can hear me okay out there. Awesome. Great.
Nice thumbs.
We've got Julia in house. We've got Drew tuning in.
Haribol.
Jai. And many wonderful regulars. This is great. This is a great crew. I'm hyped. Now it's auspicious. So we're starting the 9th chapter, which is, if you don't know it, really good news. Very good news. And we'll start with reflections. I saw a few nice reflections in the WhatsApp. I think it might have been Mary was reflecting about how, maybe a couple people were reflecting about how remarkable it is that Krishna accepted the service of somebody with awful intentions, and just what that says about the quality of his character. That's a huge point in that Putana pastime. In fact, I referenced that there's a verse in the 3rd canto Bhagavatam where Sri Uddhava, who's in the ecstasy of separation, impending separation from Krishna, as Krishna is about to leave the planet, Uddhava is recalling Krishna's amazing qualities, and he's saying, referring to this pastime, that how could I possibly take shelter of anybody who's more merciful? How could such a person even exist? Because he did this. He gave himself away. He gave Putana a spiritual body to serve him as a mother, just for coming and trying to poison him, because she came like a mother in disguise. So he was feeling some deep spiritual feelings around that. Any other reflections you have, we'd love to hear them. Comments or anything you heard? Yes.
I was
Allison.
just thinking about something in the 7th chapter and how we always talk about the safest place to be in Kali Yuga is in the middle of the kirtan, and I feel that when I am in the middle of the kirtan, and was thinking in chapter 7 when they were doing the purification process, welcoming Krishna, and then how it just simply said, no ghosts and evil spirits can remain where there is chanting of the holy name of God. And I was just thinking, like, that must have just been such a massive kirtan and like such protection against all these spirits and all these women, Mother Yashoda and all the gopis, and just this constant chanting since the beginning of history, it says right here.
Yeah, there's a verse somewhere in the 10th canto, I don't remember where it refers to the chant, the singing of the gopis as purifying the entire universe. There's that deep affection for Krishna in the kirtan. I mean, and you see that it's funny because they're praying for Krishna's protection, because they're praying to like his parts and parcel subsidiary divine beings, like this Vishnu form and that Vishnu form, and it's actually kind of amusing for us because we know that he's who he is, but it shows the science that their whole ritual was based around reverence for the cow and invoking various names. Like, may Lord Madhava protect you in this way, Govinda from above, and Vamana from the left, and Vishnu from the right, and like they're invoking all the directions and time elements, but they're all like different. Hrishikesh and Damodar and Padmanabha, and they're all different names of Krishna and the Lord, and that's a strong faith actually in the power of Vishnu Nam, of the Lord's names, and it's actually a non-sectarian consideration, because we see that in every tradition, calling on the name is actually really sacred. It's a really powerful thing to do. I think I mentioned this once. It was a a good day for me when the first time I stubbed my toe and realized that my natural response was no longer a blasphemy or like vulgarity, but was just saying Krishna or something, like, Govinda. And it worked its way into the reflexes. So that's good, because you don't have time to think. You want to get it in there into the reaction part of the brain where it's like natural. You know, when someone swerves in front of you on the road, you're like, Govinda. I know one devotee, whenever anything happens, their first response is Jagannath. So, all right, Krishna. Any more reflections, comments?
I was
Please, go ahead, Aaron. Ty goes to the runner.
I'm getting feedback. Is anybody else?
No, we're good.
Okay. I'll see through it. I'm behind on recordings, but what I've appreciated from the first class and then seeing all of the reflections that have been shared in the WhatsApp is it's very apparent that this book is going to show me Krishna as a relatable human being, if that makes sense, versus just this source God divinity, and that the qualities of his humanity will, I think, be more relatable.
Yeah, they're more relatable and they're more important. That's where the love is. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, one of our acharyas, that I think of all the different acharyas that Srila Prabhupada quotes in his purports, that maybe I haven't done like a statistical analysis, but my gut says that's the one he quotes more than any other one, because he wrote a whole commentary verse by verse in the whole Bhagavatam, and he's a very well-respected acharya. So he says that there's two things. We talked about this before. There's rasa and there's tattva, right? So tattva is like the science, things as they are. So for example, the tattva is that Krishna is not a cowherd boy. He's actually the source of everything. He's the totality of the universe, the time factor, and he's beyond all that himself. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's tattva. The rasa is, he's my son, and dang it, I got to teach him some manners because he's always just stealing from the neighbors. That's rasa. Or he's the most beautiful boy, or he's the coolest friend, I can't wait to hang out with him again today. Or, you know, that's rasa, the feeling based on his qualities. And Krishna displays those qualities, which we learned about in the Nectar of Devotion, like his intelligence and his sense of humor and his compassion. Those qualities are displayed to perfection, all of them, including some qualities that aren't even found in any other person. For example, Krishna, even other forms of Godhead, like Vishnu forms, don't actually display the attractiveness that Krishna does. So even those special qualities are super excellent. Now, what Vishwanath says is that rasa and tattva are like, it's like presenting a beautiful jewel. If you want to present a jewel, you have to have the right kind of context. You go to a jewelry store, the lighting is perfect, and they always use that really, really thick black velvet, right? Because it creates context. So the rasa of how wonderful it is that Krishna, he reciprocates so sweetly, he surrenders himself. That becomes more relishable on the background, the velvet backdrop of tattva, that here's God. Here is the complete totality of independent power. And what is he doing? He's giving himself away in love. So both are very important, but it's the rasa that steals the heart. But we need to understand the tattva so that we don't approach it like, you know, mythology or a fun story. It's not. It's actually the pastimes of the divine person. But this is, you're right, this is very, very important book. This is why Prabhupada paused the Bhagavatam to give us 10th Canto Bhagavatam in the form of Krishna book. So your instincts are spot on. We had another person here in house saying something.
Yeah, I was appreciating that there's a purpose behind the stories with the demons. Because at first for me, it's like feels pretty outrageous, but how you were able to apply knowledge to the pastimes, and the demons are each representing a false. I can't remember how you described it.
Yeah, the demons are like a false. They're like a misorientation, like an obstacle, an anartha, you could say, some burden that the living entity can carry. They represent some aspect of the psyche that way. And in addition to being specific, particularly demonic persons that Krishna liberated and sent to the spiritual world, for us, they're also representative, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur explained, of certain specific qualities you want to get over, and we need Krishna's help to get over them. And we sent a link in the WhatsApp about Bhaktivinoda Thakur's his guidance on which one is correlate to what qualities. So check that out for more information. Thank you. Yeah, I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, wow, amazing. It's like another level of tattva within the rasa. Like the rasa of Krishna kicking butt is just like, that's cool. This is why people watch action movies. This is why, there's a certain kind of quality when there's a hero versus a villain. And here it is over and over again. And it's a fight to the death, right? Which is high stakes. So there's some rasa there. And the tattva is that, he's God, but also here he is defeating, overcoming these things that we can't overcome ourselves. Like Putana is like the ingress of the bad teacher, like the false guru, and institutional strife, which creates a lot of problems, these kinds of things. And they're all obstacles, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur points out, to actually achieving prema, love. Great. Any other reflections before we head into chapter 9? Okay. All right, let's go there. So chapter 9, Mother Yashoda binds Lord Krishna. This is what's called the Damodar Lila. This is very famous, and it's especially celebrated during Kartik.
We've read it.
Yeah, we read it.
Kartik.
Once upon a time, seeing that her maidservant was engaged in different household duties, Mother Yashoda personally took charge of churning butter. And while she churned butter, she sang the childhood pastimes of Krishna and enjoyed thinking of her son. There's that purifying kirtan again. The end of her sari was tightly wrapped while she churned, and on account of her intense love for her son, milk automatically dripped from her breasts, which moved as she labored very hard, churning with 2 hands. The bangles and bracelets on her hands tinkled as they touched each other, and her earrings and breasts shook. There were drops of perspiration on her face, and the flower garland which was on her head scattered here and there. Before this picturesque sight, Lord Krishna appeared as a child. He felt hungry, and to increase his mother's love, he wanted her to stop churning. He indicated that her first business was to let him suck her breast, and then she could churn butter later. Mother Yashoda took her son on her lap and pushed the nipple of her breast into his mouth. And while Krishna was sucking the milk, she was smiling, enjoying the beauty of her child's face. Suddenly, the milk which was on the stove began to boil over. Just to stop the milk from spilling, Mother Yashoda at once put Krishna aside and went to the stove. Left in that state by his mother, Krishna became very angry, and his lips and eyes became red in rage. He pressed his teeth and lips, and taking up a piece of stone, he immediately broke the butter pot. He took butter out of it, and with false tears in his eyes, he began to eat the butter in a secluded place. In the meantime, Mother Yashoda returned to the churning place after setting the overflowing milk pan in order. She saw the broken pot in which the churning yogurt had been kept. Since she could not find her boy, she concluded that the broken pot was his work. She smiled as she thought, "The child is very clever. After breaking the pot, he has left this place fearing punishment." After she sought all over, she found her son sitting on a big wooden grinding mortar which was kept upside down. He was taking butter from a pot which was hanging from the ceiling on a swing, and he was feeding it to the monkeys. She saw Krishna looking this way and that, in fear, this way and that way in fear of her, because he was conscious of his naughty behavior. After seeing her son so engaged, she very silently approached him from behind. Krishna, however, saw her coming toward him with a stick in her hand, and he immediately got down from the grinding mortar and began to flee in fear. Mother Yashoda chased him to all corners, trying to capture the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is never approached even by the meditations of great yogis. In other words, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, who was never caught by the yogis and speculators, was playing just like a little child for such a great devotee as Mother Yashoda. Mother Yashoda, however, could not easily catch the fast-running child because of her thin waist and heavy body. Still, she tried to follow him as fast as possible. Her hair loosened, and the flowers in her hair fell to the ground. Although she was tired, she somehow reached her naughty child and captured him. When he was caught, Krishna was almost on the point of crying. He smeared his hands over his eyes, which were anointed with black eye cosmetics. The child saw his mother's face while she stood over him, and his eyes became restless from fear. Mother Yashoda could understand that Krishna was unnecessarily afraid, and for his benefit she wanted to allay his fears. Being the topmost well-wisher of her child, Mother Yashoda thought, "If the child is too fearful of me, I don't know what will happen to him." Mother Yashoda then threw away her stick, and in order to punish him, she thought to bind his hands with some rope. She did not know it, but it was actually impossible for her to bind the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mother Yashoda was thinking that Krishna was her tiny child. She did not know that the child had no limitation. There was no inside or outside of him, nor beginning or end. He is unlimited and all-pervading. Indeed, He is himself the whole cosmic manifestation. Still, Mother Yashoda was thinking of Krishna as her child. Although he is beyond the reach of all senses, she endeavored to bind him to a wooden grinding mortar. But when she tried to bind him, she found that the rope she was using was too short, by 2 inches. She gathered more ropes from the house and added to it, but still she found the same shortage. In this way, she connected all the ropes available at home. But when the final knot was added, she saw that the rope was still 2 inches too short. Mother Yashoda was smiling, but she was astonished. How was it happening? In attempting to bind her son, she became tired. She was perspiring, and the garland on her head fell down. Then Lord Krishna appreciated the hard labor of his mother, and being compassionate upon her, he agreed to be bound up by the ropes. Krishna, playing as a human child in the house of Mother Yashoda, was performing his own selected pastimes. Of course, no one can control the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The pure devotee surrenders himself unto the lotus feet of the Lord, who may either protect or vanquish the devotee, but for his part, the devotee never forgets his own position of surrender. Similarly, the Lord also feels transcendental pleasure by submitting himself to the protection of the devotee. This was exemplified by Krishna's surrender unto his mother Yashoda. Krishna is the supreme bestower of all kinds of liberation to his devotees. But the benediction which was bestowed upon Mother Yashoda was never experienced even by Lord Brahma or Lord Shiva or the goddess of fortune. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is known as the son of Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj, is never so completely known to the yogis and speculators, but he is easily available to his devotees. Nor is he appreciated as the supreme reservoir of all pleasure by the yogis and speculators. After binding her son, Mother Yashoda engaged herself in household affairs. At that time, bound up to the wooden mortar, Krishna could see a pair of trees before him which were known as Arjuna trees. The great reservoir of pleasure, Lord Sri Krishna thus thought to himself, Mother Yashoda first of all left without feeding me sufficient milk, and therefore I broke the pot of yogurt, and distributed the stock butter in charity to the monkeys. Now she has bound me up to a wooden mortar, so I shall do something more mischievous than before. And thus he thought of pulling down the 2 very tall Arjuna trees. There is a history between the pair of Arjuna trees. In their previous lives, the trees were born as the human sons of Kuvera, and their names were Nalakuvra and Manigriva. Fortunately, they came within the vision of the Lord. In their previous lives, they were cursed by the great sage Narada in order to achieve the highest benediction of seeing Lord Krishna. This benediction curse was bestowed upon them because of their forgetfulness due to intoxication. This story will be narrated in the next chapter. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 9th chapter of Krishna. Mother Yashoda binds Lord Krishna. Jai.
Jai.
Any reflections on that?
To me, it's a reminder that Krishna allows us to catch him.
Yeah.
It's through his compassion, mercy.
Only love can bind Krishna if he chooses it.
We run and run after him until he catches us. That's very true. That the Acharyas explained the two fingers too short. The rope's 2 fingers too short. 1 finger represents the endeavor of the devotee. 1 finger represents the mercy of the Lord. Both have to be there because it's a relationship. We have our part, he has his part. It just happens to be that in a relationship with the Lord, he's infinitely more powerful than we are and more knowledgeable. So his part is all the heavy lifting, but it requires the endeavor. We can see that he reciprocated with her sweating. She was working hard. She was working hard out of service. She loves him and she wants to protect him. And she saw that he's being a rascal. And everything she was doing, including chasing him with a stick, was just to put a little fear into him and to help regulate him because he's a wayward boy. And she's his mother. And she felt protective. So this struggling, tying all the ropes in the house together, her hair is getting undone, the flowers are falling, the sweat is falling from her brow. She's, what is even going on here? The astonishment, all of that. It's her own trip, as they say, but it's also relatable because we have our own experience of what's even going on here, Krishna? But if you keep trying to serve him and you keep tying the ropes together and you just keep thinking like, how can I please him here? Like, what is my service right now? Like, how can I be of service in this moment? Then he performs miracles and lets himself be bound. That's the greatest miracle. It's described in where is it described? I don't like to say things without reference. I don't remember. I think it's in the Bhagavatam somewhere. That, oh yeah, it's in the 10th canto, chapter 87, prayers of the personified Vedas. The personified Shastra, they're praying to the Lord at the beginning of creation to wake him up from his slumber as Mahavishnu. And they're saying that, oh my Lord, we're the Shastra, we know your existence. And in our opinion, your most incredible pastime, your most wonderful pastime, is your display of mercy on the fallen souls by manifesting the material world again and again, and coming down like a hero to reclaim them. So actually, the real, like, we may be struggling with this experience, that experience, and Mother Yashoda could be thinking like, oh, if I could just tie these ropes together. We could be thinking like, oh, if I just got this, if I just got that. But the real success, the real miracle, is when Krishna gives himself away to us. That's the real. That's what the Shastra, the personified Vedas, says. That's the most amazing pastime you got, Krishna. That's the most gigantic display of mercy, when you manifest the material world for an infinity of living entities who don't want you, and then you give yourself to them. That's the most amazing thing you do. So he does that for Yashoda. Of course, she's not a conditioned soul. She's a perfect soul. But still, it's instructive. Thank you. Any other reflections? I just thought it was a beautiful scene. See how Prabhupada goes out of his way to give so much detail. A lot of adjectives, a lot of exposition, narrative, just like describing what she looks like. And
even his mischief, and like I can picture him.
Yeah.
Like a little butter trail. And
looking this way and that.
Feeding it to the monkeys. And
smearing his eyes when he's caught.
This is like so naughty. I was saying to the girls, I'm like, so naughty. And then like naughty, you said naughty shortly later in the passage. And those that have been mothers in this life and others or fathers, right? It's like you, I'm sure, can imagine your children doing naughty things.
And when they're old enough to start like running around, then you're like, oh my God, I don't have the energy for this, because they're so... And if you haven't been a parent, at least you've been a child.
Yeah.
And I'm sure your parents have told you about what it was like when you were getting up to mischief.
Right.
So Krishna is like that to the perfect capacity. Yeah. All right, now we're going to hear about the backstory to these two trees. Chapter 10, the deliverance of Nalakuvara and Manigriva. The story of the cursing of Nalakuvara and Manigriva and their deliverance under the all-blissful desire of the great sage Narada is here described. The two great demigods, Nalakuvara and Manigriva, were sons of the treasurer of the demigods, Kuvera, who was a great devotee of Lord Shiva. By the grace of Lord Shiva, Kuvera's material opulences had no limit. As a rich man's sons often become addicted to wine and women, so these two sons of Kuvera were also addicted to wine and sex. Once these two demigods, desiring to enjoy, entered the garden of Lord Shiva in the province of Kailasa, on the bank of the Mandakini Ganges. There they drank much and engaged in hearing the sweet singing of the beautiful women who accompanied them in that garden of fragrant flowers. In an intoxicated condition, the two demigods entered the water of the Ganges, which was filled with lotus flowers. And there they began to enjoy the company of the young girls exactly as a male elephant enjoys female elephants within the water. So these are sons of demigods, right? They live a long time, and their father happens to be the treasurer, so they're like, think of like privileged nobility, but that in the heavenly planet. So they're really going for it. While they were thus enjoying themselves in the water, all of a sudden Narada, the great sage, happened to pass that way. He could understand that the demigods Nalakuvara and Manigriva were too much intoxicated and could not even see that he was passing. The young girls, however, were not so much intoxicated as the demigods, and they at once became ashamed at being naked before the great sage Narada. They began to cover themselves with all haste. The two demigod sons of Kuvera were so much intoxicated that they could not appreciate the presence of the sage Narada, and therefore they did not cover their bodies. On seeing the two demigods so degraded by intoxication, Narada desired their welfare, and therefore he exhibited his causeless mercy upon them by cursing them. Because the great sage was compassionate upon them, he wanted them to finish their false enjoyment of intoxication and association with young girls, and wanted them to see Lord Krishna face to face. He conceived of cursing them as follows. He said that the attraction for material enjoyment is due to an increase in the motive passion. A person in the material world, when favored by the material opulences of riches, becomes addicted to three things: intoxication, sex, and gambling. Being puffed up with the accumulation of wealth, they also become so merciless that they indulge in killing animals by opening slaughterhouses, and they think that they themselves will never die. Such foolish persons, forgetting the laws of nature, become overly infatuated with their body. They forget that the material body, even though very much advanced in civilization, up to the position of the demigods, will finally turn into ashes or stool. And while one is living, whatever the external condition of the body may be, within there is only stool, urine, and various kinds of worms. Thus, being engaged in jealousy and violence to other bodies, materialists cannot understand the ultimate goal of life. Such foolish persons commit all kinds of sinful activities on account of the temporary body, and they're even unable to consider whether the body actually belongs to them. Generally, it is said that the body belongs to the persons who feed it. One might therefore consider whether the body belongs to one personally or to the master to whom one renders service. The master of slaves claims full right to the bodies of the slaves because the master feeds the slaves. It may also be questioned whether the body belongs to the father, who is the seed-giving master of the body, or the mother, who develops the child's body in her womb. Foolish persons are engaged in committing all sorts of sins due to the misconception of identifying the material body with the self. But one should be intelligent enough to understand to whom the body belongs. A foolish person indulges in killing animals to maintain the body, but he does not consider whether the body belongs to him or to his father, or mother, or maternal grandfather. The body may also belong to a stronger man who forces it to work for him. Sometimes a slave's body is sold to a master, and from that day on the body belongs to the master. At the end of life, the body belongs to the fire because the body is given to the fire and burned to ashes. Or the body is thrown into the street to be eaten by the dogs and vultures. Before committing all kinds of sins to maintain the body, one should understand to whom the body belongs. Ultimately, it is concluded the body is a product of material nature, and at the end, it merges into material nature. Therefore, the conclusion should be that the body belongs to material nature. One should not wrongly think that the body belongs to him. To maintain a false possession, why should one indulge in killing? Why should one kill innocent animals to maintain the body? When a man is infatuated with the false prestige of opulence, he does not care for any moral instruction, but indulges in wine, women, and animal killing. In such circumstances, a poverty-stricken man is often better situated because a poor man thinks of himself in relation to other bodies. A poor man often does not wish to inflict injuries upon other bodies because he can understand more readily that when he himself is injured, he feels pain. Therefore, the great sage Narada considered that, because the demigods, Nalakuvara and Manigriva, were so infatuated by false prestige, they should be put into a condition of life devoid of opulence. A person who has a pinprick in his body does not wish others to be pricked by pins. Generally, it is seen that one who has risen from poverty-stricken life and becomes wealthy creates some charitable institution so that other poverty-stricken men might be benefited. In short, a compassionate poor man may consider others' pain and pleasures with empathy. A poor man is seldom puffed up with false pride, and he may be freed from all kinds of infatuation. He may remain satisfied by whatever he gets for his maintenance by the grace of the Lord. To remain in a poverty-stricken condition is a kind of austerity. According to Vedic culture, therefore, the Brahmins, as a matter of routine, keep themselves in a poverty-stricken condition to save themselves from the false prestige of material opulence. A poverty-stricken man cannot become unnaturally fat by eating more and more. And on account of not being able to eat more than he requires, his senses are not very turbulent. When the senses are not very turbulent, he cannot become violent. Another advantage of poverty is that a saintly person can easily enter a poor man's house, and thus the poor man can take advantage of the saintly person's association. A very opulent man does not allow anyone to enter his house, therefore the saintly person cannot enter. You know, having engaged in the transcendental art of distributing books, spiritual books, I gotta tell you, that's true. The best place to distribute books is like a lower middle class area, because they have little something to give, but they're also humble enough from the circumstances of their life that they're like, yeah, come on in. What you got? talk to me, have a conversation. But if you go to like really wealthy places, it's like guard dogs, like driveways that are like, guarded by a person. There's really like, they look at you askance. There's a lot of, because the more you have, the more you're afraid of losing. There's that quality that comes up. And there's more false prestige, and it gets in the way of bringing spiritual literature to them, or kirtan or something. So we see that. It's not systematic, everybody is an individual, but Narada was recognizing these people have a problem. And the problem is that they're misusing their privilege. So let's take it away from them and purify them a bit so they can actually make some real advancement. Of what use are persons who are puffed up with material opulence and prestige if they are bereft of the association of saintly persons and devotees? The great sage Narada thereafter thought that it was his duty to put those demigods into a condition where they could not be falsely proud of their material opulence and prestige. It was the duty of a saintly person like Narada to save them from their abominable condition. In animal life, the animal has no sense to understand that he is naked. But Kuvera was the treasure of the demigods, a very responsible man, and Nalakuvara and Manigriva were two of his sons, and yet they became so animalistic and irresponsible that they could not understand, due to intoxication, that they were naked. Narada therefore thought that the best punishment for them was to make them an immovable living entity. Trees are nature's laws immovable. Although trees are covered by the mode of ignorance, they cannot do harm. The great sage Narada thought it fitting that, although the brothers would be punished to become trees, by his mercy they would continue to keep their memory and be able to know why they were being punished. After changing the body, a living entity generally forgets his previous life. But in special cases, by the grace of the Lord, as with Nalakuvara and Manigriva, one can remember. Sage Narada therefore contemplated that the two demigods should remain for 100 years in the time of the demigods in the form of trees, and after that they would be fortunate enough to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face by his causeless mercy. And thus they would again be promoted to the life of the demigods and become great devotees of the Lord. Yes?
When it says that they'll remain for 100 years in the time of the demigods, is that longer than 100 human years that we know?
My understanding is that he's referring to, Prabhupada's referring to the time scale on the heavenly planets.
So it's even longer than 100
Yeah, it'll feel like 100 years for them, but from our point of view, it's longer. Just like the full lifetime of a mosquito. There are these insects that like they last like a night, like they live like a day and night, and for them, their whole lifespan is our 24 hours.
Yeah.
You go to sleep and then you wake up and you see their bodies are on the floor. They died. They had a full, complete life. So from the perspective of the demigods, our 100 years is like that, right? Brahma's whole lifetime is 311 trillion years. The lower upper planets, like there, it's less than that. But it is longer.
Fascinating.
Relativity of time.
Sorry, I have one other question.
Yeah.
It said you read how the trees are in the mode of ignorance.
Yeah, the form of a tree.
Why is that the mode of ignorance? Just because they're not aware, they don't have a level
It's
of
relatively
consciousness?
covered. I mean, everyone's covered by all three of the most to some degree.
Right.
But the trees, plant life in general, has more tamas than mammals, humans, and so forth. The consciousness is more covered.
Right.
There is a living entity in there, right? They can feel. They have some sentience, but
Right.
they don't have refined sensibilities,
So
right?
it's that. Like,
There's
they
more
don't have
tamas.
the capacity to like be in sattva. Even though when I think of a tree, I'm like, it's tolerant, it's patient, it's like, as Lord Chaitanya spoke of, and they're like taking in carbon monoxide and sending out oxygen. So I'm like, that's so sattvic. However, they don't.
From our point of view, it's tolerant and patient, and we're learning that from that. But from the point of view of living as a tree,
It's not like choosing that.
it's not like a great saint who just gives magnanimously.
Yeah.
It's just in that situation, right? That's why it's less karmically binding to eat a plant than it is to eat an animal. They're going to feel pain. They're a living being, but they're going to feel less. Their nervous systems are less developed. They're less aware of their existential situation. In this case, these two were allowed to remember so they could actually learn the lesson. That's what they needed to have. So they're special. But they got to see Krishna.
That's not
Although child Krishna was bound up to the wooden mortar, he began to proceed toward the twin trees in order to fulfill the prophecy of his great devotee, Narada. I must now fulfill the words of my great devotee Narada, he thought. Then he proceeded through the passage between the two trees. Although he was able to pass through the passage, the large wooden mortar stuck horizontally between the trees. Taking advantage of this with great strength, Lord Krishna began to pull the rope which was tied to the mortar. As soon as he pulled, the two trees with all their branches and limbs fell down with a great sound. Out of the broken, fallen trees came two personalities, shining like blazing fire. All sides became illuminated and beautiful by their presence. The two purified personalities immediately came before child Krishna and bowed down to offer their respects and prayers in the following words. Dear Lord Krishna, you are the original personality of Godhead, master of all mystic powers. You are the eternal God, Lord Vishnu, who is all-pervading, the imperishable controller of everything, and you are eternal time. You are living as a supersoul in all the multi-forms of living entities, and you know very well what is going on within their bodies and minds. Therefore, you are the supreme director of all activities, of all living entities. But although you are in the midst of everything which is under the spell of the material modes of nature, you are not affected by such contaminated qualities. Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of you, Lord Vasudeva, the Supreme Brahman, who are always glorified by your personal internal potencies. In this material world, you make yourself known only by your different incarnations. Although you assume different types of bodies, these bodies are not part of the material creation. They are always full of the transcendental potencies of unlimited opulence, strength, beauty, fame, wisdom, and renunciation. In the material existence, there is a difference between the body and the owner of the body, but because you appear in your original spiritual body, there is no such difference for you. When you appear, your uncommon activities indicate that you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, cause the birth and death as well as the liberation of the living entities, and you are full with all your plenary expansions. O Lord, O source of all auspiciousness and goodness, we offer our respectful obeisances unto you. O Lord, our father known as Kuvera, the demigod, is your servant. Similar to the great sage Narada is also your servitor, and only by their grace have we been able to see you personally. We therefore pray that we may always be engaged in your transcendental loving service by speaking only about your glories and hearing about your transcendental activities. May our hands and other limbs be engaged in your service, and our minds always be concentrated at your lotus feet, and our heads always bowed down before the all-pervading universal form of your lordship. When the demigods, Nalakuvara and Manigriva, finished their prayers, the child, Lord Krishna, the master and proprietor of Gokula, smiled and said, It was already known to me that my great devotee Narada Muni had shown his causeless mercy by saving you from the abominable condition of pride, due to possessing extraordinary beauty and opulence in a family of demigods. All these facts are already known to me. You are very fortunate because not only were you cursed by him, but you had the great opportunity to see him. If someone is able by chance to see face to face a great saintly person like Narada, who is always serene and merciful to everyone, then immediately that conditioned soul becomes liberated. This is exactly like being situated in the full light of the sun. There cannot be any visionary impediment. Therefore, O Nalakuvara and Manigriva, your lives have now become successful because you have developed ecstatic love for me. This is your last birth within material existence. Now you can go back to your father's residence in the heavenly planets, and by remaining in the attitude of devotional service, you will be liberated in this very life. After this, the demigods circumambulated the Lord many times and bowed down before him, again and again, and thus they left. The Lord remained bound up with ropes to the grinding mortar. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 10th chapter of Krishna, the deliverance of Nalakuvara and Manigriva. Jai.
Can I share what that represents?
Yes.
The Narta represents arrogant pride that comes from puffed up prestige, which is rooted in madness for wealth.
Madness for wealth leading to puffed up prestige, leading to arrogant pride. Yeah, hearing of Krishna liberate them, it purifies us of that. Makes sense. That was their whole disease. I always appreciated how Krishna reciprocates with his devotee. I mean, they're like any other living entities, But Narada cast his glance on them. He's like, yeah, I want these ones to get the mercy. And Krishna is reciprocating with the desires of his devotees. So Prabhupada goes out of his way to say there that anybody who sees a devotee gets liberated. They get great benefit, especially if they see a very advanced devotee. So because the mercy of the Lord follows the mercy of the devotee, it's described like the sunrise. Before the sunrise, you have the rays of the sun. Vishwanath says, and if you see the rays of the sun coming up, it means you're going to see the sun peek its head up above the horizon. It's inevitable. And he says similarly, when you see a devotee, it's to be understood that the appearance of the Lord in your life is also inevitable, as much as the sun is rising. So. Yeah, and the other thing is that the curse of the devotee is better than any blessing. It seemed like Narada was just being touchy or like throwing his weight around. You know what? I curse you. But it was actually not like that at all. It was actually just out of compassion. It was to help them. He saw what they needed and he gave it to them in such a way that Krishna would reciprocate. So
much mercy.
So much mercy. Any other reflections?
Something that kind of came to mind, almost like in opposition to Narada's curse, is like, to me, I feel like, based on like recent circumstances, like a little bit of a fear about being like paralyzed in my body. And I was thinking, wow, they had this curse where they were fully aware of what they had done, but couldn't serve by using their like physical bodies. But they still got the mercy of Krishna and Narada. And I was just feeling like, it's like a nice encouragement to like any resistance or fear I have that kind of paralyzes me from moving forward. And gratitude of also like, I don't know all of my karmas. I don't know all of my past life regressions and what I have done. So not only do I not have to have all of that information from potentially millions of lives, but I'm in a physical body that I can use for service, and like regardless of if I get to see Krishna or not, it's almost more about just having a physical body that's able to be used in service.
Yeah.
Like, I would never want to be in those trees, even if I knew I'd see Krishna. Like, to me that sounds horrible, to be fully aware of what you've done and to not be able to like be mobile in service.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't there, but I got to think that it was tolerable.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it sounds like a kind of torture.
Yeah,
But for the living entity who's put into a body, it's described in the seventh canto, sixth canto. I don't remember. One of those two cantos, that the living entity, when they're put into when the subtle body is put into a gross body, it accommodates the existence that's required, right? Like for us to see like a pig living in its own filth and like eating that, it's like, oh my God, what are you even thinking? That's awful. But for them, they're all about it. It's like natural and okay. So for the tree to be bound up, it's natural for the position of the tree. I'm sure whatever they had to remember, they needed to remember. They maintain that, but there's a reason why we don't remember all of our past lives, and there's a reason why it would be actually torture.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if the trees could understand their existential situation? So don't think that Narada like put him into something that's out of a horror movie. It doesn't work like that. The material nature accommodates it so that there's no unnecessary suffering. But I think the essence of your point is that,
it's my projection of
I've got hands.
Whoa. Yeah.
I can do stuff. I got a voice.
Yeah.
I've got opposable thumbs. I've got a pretty good brain. I mean, maybe I could find people with smarter brains, but I got a human mind. That's pretty good compared to what most living entities have got to work with. I mean, raccoons can't really sit down and hear the Bhagavatam. At least I can do that. So we have a lot to be grateful for.
Did we have something in the chat?
Yeah, and ultimately remembrance is a form of service. Ultimately, it's the essence of service. Even if you're unconscious or something, you can still remember. Yeah, so in the chat, the Arjuna tree reminds me of a metaphor of the life I was living before I became Krishna conscious. It was as if I was contained within a life without fully living. And when I became Krishna conscious, my life completely transformed and I can now stand in the sun. Jai.
Who said that?
Mel. Yeah. And that's retroactive. Like, you don't realize that till afterwards. You know, like, it's kind of, you can imagine going to people and being like, you're not living a real life. I'm living a real life. It would sound so arrogant, right? But if you could see yourself from so many years ago, you might just say that. You might feel that. Like, I feel that. You feel that way, right? And so it's a retroactive thing of like, actually, I was bound. I was operating under these artificial restraints, and now I feel complete, just like they were bound. And then there it is. Krishna comes and effortlessly breaks the tree down, gives them their demigod bodies back, gives them his darshan, and they're like completely liberated. So it's a nice reflection.
I think it also, well, I'm going. I think it also to Krishna, like, see what he gives you everything. And if
There's a
you
little bit of a delay on your audio.
Or it's cutting in and out.
Try again and speak a little slower, or type it in. Okay, she's gonna type it. Any other reflections?
I have an echo too.
No, you're
I
good.
can make through. Okay. I was thinking when, just sort of in a very literal sense. Sorry, I'm being distracted by my echo, so maybe I'll. It's not on your end, but it is on mine. So
Yeah, that's weird. You guys are experiencing echo, but I'm not. You all have echo. Huh.
They all have echo.
What can we do about that? One sec.
I don't know. We're muted.
On Zoom stuff, I never ends. The Zoom stuff.
After all these years.
Right?
Huh.
Yeah.
Well,
we're not doing
it's always an
anything
adventure.
Yeah.
I will say it's always an adventure with this whole technology thing. Let's try that again. Can you?
Why don't you just mute yourself when someone else talks? Try that.
Yeah.
Drew, try talk.
Okay. Oh, I don't have an echo anymore. Okay. So I was gonna say it's recently been sort of very poignant for me where I'm at right now. This idea of like maintaining health of the body that I have, and just where it it was speaking of, forget who was speaking of, but the idea of who owns the body, and sort of putting that in the context of deciding whether or not to give in to certain urges or desires, and like deciding what is sort of needed or what you need to need or want to consume in various ways. Really thinking about why you're engaging in certain activities or why you're consuming certain foods or whatever. This is very important. I guess it just struck me in a very real way. And I also wanted to say thank you to Shamya for reading, and to Kishori for leading us through such a wonderful kirtan, and for everybody for allowing me to come in and join you partway through the class.
I mean, you can come anytime. It's not the same without you. So you're very welcome. Yeah, I like that too. That kind of philosophical aside where it's like, hey, who does the body even belong to? Like, what's the deal? Because you got to give it back. It's like a rental car, right? If it was really yours, you could keep it. Like you can get a rental, and you can think, oh, like this is totally mine. You can decorate your rental home, or you can like your rental car. But the point is, the owner can come at any point and be like, yeah, you're going right now. And you don't have much say about that. Or like when the lease is up, it's like, that's it. Take it back. So it's not actually yours anyway. It's just a gift from Mother Nature, temporary accommodation. Important accommodation, we respect it, we honor it, but it's not ours. It's not eternally ours. It's on loan. So that's there. And then Eileen was saying, she typed out her message, she said, when Krishna likes you, he gives you everything, and when he loves you, he takes it all away. Yeah, Narada Muni kind of showed that. Because they had so much, and someone could be like, wow, Narada's really a jerk. You know, here they are, they're living the life. They're doing what everybody wants to. They got the girls, they got the booze, they're in the heavenly gardens of Lord Shiva, they got a long lifespan. Like, what a guy, taking him away from that. Like,
Living La Vida Loca.
he doesn't like them. He's a terrible person. But no, he takes it all away because that's what was necessary for them. Not everyone has to have it taken away, but for them, they were intoxicated. Notably, their girlfriends were a little more, right-minded. They could feel like a little bit of shame that this saint is walking by and they're naked, but they were all out of their skulls. But they needed to get a wake-up call so they could actually get some context on their existence. And so he took it away because that's merciful. Because if he didn't, they would just go on, oblivious. Yeah. And a couple other things in chat. Let's see. Yeah, Sundarananda had to check out. Okay.
And we've all needed that wake up call in our own, for different reasons.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be so drastic, but everybody gets it. Everybody gets a wake up call sometimes where it's like, you go through something and it sucks and it's painful, and then maybe if you're lucky during, but at least afterwards, you're like, you know what? That was really good. It was hard, but it was what I needed, and I'm glad it happened.
Is anyone going through that now?
Oh yeah. Perpetual.
Perpetually. Krishna really loves you.
Right?
All right, I want to get this next chapter in because I think we can do it. Chapter 11, killing the demons Vatsasura and Bakasura. When the twin Arjuna trees fell to the ground, making a sound like the falling of thunderbolts, all the inhabitants of Gokula immediately came to the spot. They were very much astonished to see how the two great trees had suddenly fallen. When they saw child Krishna bound up to the wooden mortar by the ropes of Mother Yashoda, they thought that it must have been caused by some demon. Otherwise, how was it possible? At the same time, they were very much perturbed because such uncommon incidents were always happening to child Krishna. While the cowherd men were thus contemplating, the small children who were playing there informed the men that the trees had fallen because Krishna had pulled the wooden mortar with the ropes binding him. Krishna came in between the two trees, they explained, and the wooden mortar was topsy-turvied and stuck in between the trees. Krishna pulled the rope and the trees fell down. When the trees fell down, two very dazzling men came out of the trees and they said something to Krishna. Most of the cowherd men did not believe the statement of the children. They could not believe that such things were at all possible. Some of the men, however, believed them and told Nanda Maharaj, "Your child is different from all other children. He just might have done it." Nanda Maharaj smiled to hear about the extraordinary abilities of his son. He came forward and untied the knot just to free his wonderful child. After being freed by Nanda Maharaj, Krishna was taken onto the laps of the elder gopis. They took him away to the courtyard of the house and began to clap, praising his wonderful activities. Krishna danced along with their clapping, just like an ordinary child. The Supreme Lord Krishna, being completely controlled by the gopis, sang and danced just like a puppet in their hands. It's described in the Srimad Bhagavatam that, I think it's a commentary actually by one of the acharyas, either Sanatana Goswami or Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that when Krishna was a boy, he was really young, the mothers of Vrindavan, because they all saw him as their child, they all have the mother mood, not just Yashoda, they all have the mood of a mother to him. They would call him and get him to dance, and they would say, "Now if you dance and sing, we will give you half a sweetmeat." like half of a sweet ball. And here the Supreme Personality of Godhead would like sing and dance for half a sweet ball. So, nice detail. Sometimes Mother Yashoda used to ask Krishna to bring her a wooden plank for sitting. Although the wooden plank was far too heavy to be carried by a child, still, somehow or other, Krishna would bring it to his mother. Sometimes his father, while worshipping Narayana, would ask him to bring his wooden slippers, and Krishna, with great difficulty, would put the slippers on his head and bring them to his father. When he was asked to lift some heavy article and was unable to lift it, he would simply move his arms In this way, daily, at every moment, he was the reservoir of all pleasure for his parents. The Lord was exhibiting such childish dealings with the inhabitants of Vrindavan because he wanted to show the great philosophers and sages searching after the absolute truth, how the supreme absolute truth personality of Godhead is controlled by and subject to the desires of his pure devotees. One day a fruit vendor came before the house of Nanda Maharaj. Upon hearing the vendor call, "If anyone wants fruits, please come and take them from me," Child Krishna immediately took some grains in his palms and went to get fruits in exchange. In those days, exchange was by barter. Therefore, Krishna might have seen his parents acquire fruits and other things by bartering grain, and so he imitated. But his palms were very small, and he was not very careful to hold the grains tight, so he was dropping them. The vendor, who came to sell fruits, saw this and was very much captivated by the beauty of the Lord. And so she immediately accepted whatever few grains were left in his palms and filled his hands with fruits. In the meantime, the vendor saw that her whole basket of fruit had become filled with jewels. The Lord is the bestower of all benedictions. If someone gives something to the Lord, he is not the loser. He is the gainer by 1,000,000 times. One day, Lord Krishna, the liberator of the twin Arjuna trees, was playing with Balaram and the other children on the bank of the Yamuna, and because it was already late in the morning, Rohini, the mother of Balaram, went to call them back home. But Balaram and Krishna were so engrossed in playing with their friends that they did not wish to go back. They just engaged themselves in playing more and more. That was so me when I was a kid. I never went back when my mom called me for the first time. Ever. I would hide. Just to play more. When Rohini was unable to take them back home, she went home and sent Mother Yashoda to call them again. Call in the big guns. Mother Yashoda was so affectionate toward her son that as soon as she came out to call him back home, her breasts filled up with milk. She loudly cried, "My dear child, please come back home. Your time for lunch is already past." She then said, "My dear Krishna, oh my dear lotus-eyed child, please come and suck my breast. You have played enough. You must be very hungry. My dear little child, you must be tired from playing for so long." She also addressed Balaram thus, "My dear Rama, the glory of your family. My dear child, please come back with your younger brother Krishna immediately. You have been engaged in playing since early morning and you must be very tired. Please come back and take your lunch at home. Your father Nandaraj is waiting for you. He has to eat, so you must come back so that he can eat." As soon as Krishna and Balaram heard that Nanda Maharaj was waiting for them and could not take his food in their absence, they started to return. Their playmates complained, "Krishna is leaving us just at the point when our playing is at the summit. Next time we shall not allow him to leave." His playmates then threatened not to allow him to play with them again. Krishna became afraid, and instead of going back home, he went back again to play with the boys. I don't know if you guys can relate, but when boys, their mom calls them back, if you go, then the other boys are like, "Oh, you're a mama's boy. Look at you going back. Why don't you stay with us and be cool?" So the friends are pulling that card. And Krishna's like, "Oh yeah?" So he's staying, because Krishna's not going to be called uncool. Krishna became afraid, and instead of going back home, he went back again to play with the boys. At that time, Mother Yashoda scolded the children and told Krishna, "My dear Krishna, do you think you are a street boy? You have no home? Please come back to your home. I see that your body has become very dirty from playing since early morning. Now come home and take your bath. Besides, today is your birthday ceremony. Therefore, you should come back home and give cows in charity to the Brahmins. Don't you see how your playmates are decorated with ornaments by their mothers? You should also be cleansed and decorated with nice dress and ornaments. Please therefore come back, take your bath, dress yourself nicely, and then again you may go on playing." When Mother Yashoda's children, Krishna and Balaram, came home, she bathed them very nicely and dressed them with ornaments. She then called for the Brahmanas, and through her children she gave many cows in charity for the occasion of Krishna's birthday. In this way she performed the birthday ceremony of Krishna at home. After this incident, all the elder cowherd men assembled together, and Nanda Maharaj presided. They began to consult among themselves how to stop the great disturbance in Mahavana on account of the demons. In this meeting, Upananda, the brother of Nanda Maharaj, was present. He was a leader, and he addressed the meeting as follows: "My dear friends, now we should leave here for another place, because we are contained demons are coming here to disturb the peaceful situation, and they are especially attempting to kill the small children. Just consider Putana and Krishna. It was simply by the grace of Lord Hari that Krishna was saved from the hands of such. Next, the whirlwind demon took Krishna away into the sky, but by the grace of Lord Hari, he was saved, and the demon fell down on a stone slab and died. Very recently this child was playing between two trees and the trees fell down violently, and yet there was no injury to the child, so Lord Hari saved him again. Just imagine the calamity if this child or any other child playing with him were crushed by the falling trees. Considering all these incidents, we must conclude that this place is no longer safe. Let us all leave. We have all been saved from different calamities by the grace of Lord Hari. I think that we should all go to the forest known as Vrindavana, where just now there are newly grown plants and herbs. Near Vrindavan is Govardhan Hill, which is very beautiful, and there are newly grown grass and fodder for the animals, so there will be no difficulty in living there. I therefore suggest that we start immediately for that beautiful place, as there is no need to waste any more time. On hearing this statement of Upananda, all the cowherd men immediately agreed, "Let us immediately go there." Everyone then loaded all their household furniture and utensils onto the carts, and prepared to go to Vrindavana. All the children, women, and old men of the village were arranged on seats, and the cowherd men equipped themselves with bows and arrows to follow the carts. All the cows and bulls were placed in the front along with their calves, and the men with their bows and arrows surrounded their herds and carts, and began to blow on their horns and bugles. In this way, with tumultuous sound, they started for Vrindavan. And who can describe the damsels of Vraja? They were all seated on the carts and were very beautifully dressed with ornaments and costly saris. They chanted the pastimes of child Krishna as usual. Mother Yashoda and Mother Rohini were seated on a separate cart, and Krishna and Balaram were seated on their laps. While Mother Rohini and Yashoda were riding on the cart, they talked to Krishna and Balaram, and feeling the pleasure of such talks, they looked very, very beautiful. In this way, after reaching Vrindavana, where everyone lives eternally, very peacefully and happily, they encircled Vrindavana, drew all the carts together in a half circle, and in this way constructed a temporary residence. When Krishna and Balaram saw the beautiful appearance of Vrindavan, Govardhan Hill, and the banks of the river Yamuna, they felt very happy. As they grew up, they began talking with their parents and others in childish language, and thus they gave great pleasure to all the inhabitants of Vrindavan. Soon, Krishna and Balaram had grown sufficiently to be given charge of the calves. Cowherd boys from the very beginning of their childhood are trained to take care of the cows, and their first responsibility is to take care of the little calves. So, along with the other little cowherd boys, Krishna and Balaram went into the pasturing ground and took charge of the calves, and there they played with their playmates. While taking charge of the calves, sometimes the two brothers played on their flutes, and sometimes they played with amalaka fruits and bale fruits, just as small children play with balls. Sometimes they danced and made tinkling sounds with their ankle bells. Sometimes they made themselves into bulls and cows by covering themselves with blankets. Thus Krishna and Balaram played. The two brothers also used to imitate the sounds of bulls and cows and play like two bulls fighting. Sometimes they used to imitate the sounds of various animals and birds. In this way they enjoyed their childhood pastimes apparently like ordinary, mundane children. Once, when Krishna and Balaram were playing on the bank of the Yamuna, a demon of the name Vatsasura assumed the shape of a calf and came there intending to kill the brothers. By taking the shape of a calf, the demon could mingle with the other calves. Krishna, however, specifically noticed this, and he immediately alerted Balaram about the entrance of the demon. Both brothers then silently approached him. Krishna caught hold of the demon calf by the two hind legs and tail, whipped him around very forcibly, and threw him up into a tree. The demon lost his life and fell down from the top of the tree to the ground. When the demon lay dead on the ground, all the playmates of Krishna congratulated him. "Well done, well done!" And the demigods in the sky showered flowers with great satisfaction. In this way, the maintainers of the complete creation, Krishna and Balaram, used to take care of the calves every day, beginning in the morning. And thus they enjoyed their childhood pastimes as cowherd boys in Vrindavan. One day, lost my place. One day, all the cowherd boys went to the bank. I read that right?
Nope.
No. All the cowherd boys went to the bank of the river Yamuna to water their calves. When the calves drank water from the Yamuna, the boys also drank. After drinking, when they were sitting on the bank of the river, they saw a huge animal which looked something like a heron and was as big as a hill. Its top was as strong as a thunderbolt. When they saw that unusual animal, they became afraid of it. The name of this beast was Bakasura, and he was a friend of Kamsa's. He appeared on the scene suddenly and immediately attacked Krishna with his pointed, sharp beak and quickly swallowed him up. When Krishna was thus swallowed, all the boys, headed by Balaram, became almost breathless, as if they had died. But when the Bakasura demon was swallowing up Krishna, he felt a burning, fiery sensation in his throat. This was due to the glowing effulgence of Krishna. The demon quickly threw Krishna up and tried to kill him by pinching him with his beak. Bakasura did not know that although Krishna was playing the part of a child of Nanda Maharaj, he was still the original father of Lord Brahma, the creator of the universe. Mother Yashoda's child, who was the reservoir of pleasure for the demigods and who was the maintainer of saintly persons, caught hold of the gigantic heron by the two halves of his beak, and before his coward boyfriends, bifurcated his mouth, just as a child very easily splits a blade of grass. From the sky, the denizens of the heavenly planets showered flowers like the mallika, the most fragrant of all flowers, as a token of their congratulations. Accompanying the showers of flowers was a vibration of bugles, drums, and conch shells. When the boys saw the showering of flowers and heard the celestial sounds, they were struck with wonder. And when they saw Krishna freed from the mouth of the great demon Bakasura, all of them, including Balaram, were so pleased that it seemed as if they had regained their very source of life. As soon as they saw Krishna coming toward them, they one after another embraced the son of Nanda and held him to their chests. After this, they assembled all the calves under their charge and began to return home. When they arrived home, they spoke of the wonderful activities of the son of Nanda. When the gopis and cowherd men all heard the story from the boys, they felt great happiness because naturally they loved Krishna. And by hearing about his glories and victorious activities, they became still more affectionate toward him. Thinking that child Krishna had been saved from the mouth of death, they looked upon his face with great love and affection. They were full of anxiety and could not turn their faces from the vision of Krishna. The gopis and the men began to converse among themselves about how wonderful it was that child Krishna had been attacked in so many ways and so many times by so many demons, yet the demons themselves had been killed and Krishna had remained uninjured. They continued to converse among themselves about how so many great demons in such fierce bodies had attacked Krishna to kill him, but by the grace of Hari, had not been able to cause even a slight injury. Rather, they had died like small flies in a fire. Thus they remembered the words of Garga Muni, who had foretold, by dint of his vast knowledge of the Vedas and astrology, that this boy would be attacked by many demons. Now they were actually seeing that this was coming true, word for word. All the cowherd men, including Nanda Maharaj, used to talk of the wonderful activities of Lord Krishna and Balaram. And they were always so much absorbed in those talks that they forgot the threefold miseries of this material existence. This is the effect of Krishna consciousness. What was enjoyed 5,000 years ago by Nanda Maharaj can still be enjoyed by Krishna conscious persons, simply by talking about the transcendental pastimes of Krishna and his associates. Balaram and Krishna enjoyed their childhood pastimes, imitating Lord Ramachandra's monkeys, who constructed the bridge over the ocean, and Hanuman, who jumped over the water to Ceylon. They used to imitate such pastimes among their friends and so happily passed their childhood life. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 11th chapter of Krishna, killing the demons Vatsasura and Bakasura. Let us know, if you can, what those two demons represent.
The calf demon represents a childish type of mentality which gives rise to a type of greediness, which results in a wicked type of mischievousness. Then Bakasura, the stork demon, cunning duplicity, deceptiveness, and false types of behavior.
R.I.P.
R.I.P.
All right. I don't think we have time for this next chapter. The next three chapters, or two chapters, 2, 3, kind of go in together anyway. They're like a unit.
Cool.
So we'll pause here. All right. Any reflections? Anything you heard today or that last chapter you just want to reflect, share, questions, comments? That was a good session of hearing and chanting.
Sure, I could repeat what Bakasura was representing.
A childish type of mentality, which gives rise to a type of greediness, which results in a wicked type of mischievousness. So childishness, greediness, and mischievousness.
Thank you.
And what was the other one?
Bakasura, the stork demon, duplicity. Duplicity and deceptiveness.
There's a link in the chat.
I'll put it in again.
We could put it in again, yeah. It was from last week. Caitlin says in the chat, things can be simple but not easy. Care to elaborate?
Yeah. I'll put it in the chat.
Wait,
Oh,
go
let
on.
me mute my.
Hello. Okay. This was in reference to what we were talking about right after the the last chapter, how Kishori had asked, oh, does anyone feel like things should be easy or they aren't? And something that I was thinking with today is that, like, Krishna consciousness is feasibly simple, but it's not easy. So it's like there's so much of these lives that we lead that seem that these activities, this service, this devotion is simple, but there are things that complicate it, that get in the way. So it's like there's this sort of a theme that I'm like feeling in life right now where it is, yes, there are a lot of things that are simple, but I'm having a hard time doing them, having that motivation, offering it to Krishna and being like, hello, take this from me. I would like to not have it, but knowing that also those same challenges are there for a reason, or at least give me more learning opportunity, is like, okay, well, here's a lesson for me in the fact that the difference between simplicity and ease.
Thank you. Yeah. Srila Prabhupada puts it that Krishna consciousness is simple for the simple. And yeah, I appreciate your comment and your reflection, because it reminds me that the bhakti process really holds a mirror up to our own complications. And that can be humbling. And it makes sense that it's simple because it's not artificial. It's actually just like going back to who we really are. And it's really interesting because the really advanced devotees, even if they stay in a complicated situation externally, their internal mode of like being is just always so simple. So it's like this cultivation of internally being very simple in relationship to Krishna, and then you can just glide through whatever complications life throws at you. Because the externals complications are always going to be there, but yeah, I like that. Things can be simple but not easy. That's a nice little sutra. Yeah, put that on a bumper. It might be too deep though. They might get distracted and crash their car seeing that. What does that mean? Ah! Yeah, that's good. T-shirt.
T-shirt.
Conversation starter. Any more reflections or comments, questions?
Someone has their hand up.
Oh, someone has their hand up. Mel.
All right. I thought maybe that might be easier than the unmuting situation. Thank you for muting. I really appreciated the one line about when the fruit vendor offers him the fruit, and it says at the very end, the Lord is the bestower of all benedictions. If someone gives something to the Lord, he is not the loser. He is the gainer by 1,000,000 times. And, when I was in India, it was like this moment of taking pause and recognizing what Krishna's reciprocity looks like in a life. And never once would I imagine that I was going to be there again so soon. Never once did I imagine that I would be there in the way that I was there. Never once did I imagine that I would be in all these temples, seeing and learning and growing and, all at the mercy of the hand of Krishna. And never once did I ever think that all of my devotional service that I've done at my altar, in my life, and the ways that I've acted, and never once did I expect that this would be something that would be given to me. And yet, like, I was standing on a rooftop one night of Siddhanta's house, and I was watching the sunset, and I was just filled with like this overwhelming sense of just understanding the grandness of reciprocity of Krishna's love. And it's really moving when we take a pause and we can notice that all of the, you read in Bhagavad Gita, like the sacrifice that you give in living in bhakti. And then when you can see that, like this says, like you're not the loser, you're the gainer by 1,000,000 times. And like, what does that mean? It's tremendous. It's really tremendous.
Thank you. I have a godbrother in Japan whose name is Vanchatita Das. Vanchatita is the name of Krishna. Vanchatita means the one who surpasses your desires. Krishna, he fulfills your desires in such a way that he just blows them out of the water. It's like, we can't even think big enough. Krishna, his scale is, and his generosity is so overwhelming. It's like if you want a little water and like a thundercloud just like pours down from the clouds, from the sky on top of you. So it could be like that sometimes. Vanchatita. So yeah, the fruit vendor didn't know what they were doing. They just gave something to Krishna. And the Prabhupada's just pointing out, like, that's how he is. Look at Putana, right? So that's what Uddhava was feeling. He was feeling such ecstasy that he was crying when he was recalling that pastime, that who am I even dealing with here? How could there be anybody worth my time after I experienced this level of reciprocity? Does he even have anything left to give anybody after he gives himself away to Putin, of all people? So, yeah, nice reflection. Any more? Okay. Anything from our live studio audience?
That's us.
Peanut gallery.
Amy, do you have anything you want to share?
That's okay. All right. Okay, it's 8 o'clock. So we're going to think about Krishna. And we're going to share any reflections we'd like to on these 3 chapters in the WhatsApp. Those chapters 9, 10, 11. And then we're going to get into the whole Aghasura, stealing of the cowherd boys, Brahma. There's a whole chunk of Leela coming up that's just, I mean, outstanding. And we'll try and get through all that next week. Thank you so much for tuning in. It was super enlivening because you're all here at a bigger crew than usual. Thank you, Drew. Thank you for our live devotees. Thank you for the YouTube devotees. We know you're out there. Hare Krishna. And let's have one Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. May you meet your manageable spiritual goals so that you can experience Krishna Vanchatita, just exceeding any idea you could possibly have of how he could reciprocate with them on his end. Hare Krishna. See you next week.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.